Hi there, I'm Jeff Murrah, and I want to welcome you to True Texas History, where today we're going to be talking about the Constitution of the Republic of Texas. Now, I decided to go ahead and do this one today because technically the Constitution was, it took several days to write after the Declaration of Independence, and some of the people went ahead and signed it this day, March the 17th. So I figured, well, that'd be good to go ahead and go into. Very few people study and are familiar with the Constitution of the United States, and even fewer are familiar with the Constitution of the Republic of Texas. Now, the Republic of Texas Constitution was largely modeled after the U.S. Constitution. It had some changes and caveats. Of course, at any time that happens, people are trying to improve upon what they're familiar with. Now, much like the U.S. Constitution, there were three houses: the legislative, the judicial, and the executive. Three branches, I should say. And legislatively, the Texas Constitution was very much similar to the U.S., except each county had a representative, and they put some limits on how many representatives could be in the House. And to be a representative, you had to be 25 years old. To be a senator, you had to be 30, a resident of your district a year prior to the election, and be a citizen of the Republic. Gee, the whole idea of citizenship is not new. And likewise, president was elected by the people for a 3-year term. Now, some of the differences, not only was there a 3-year term, they also did not you were ineligible to succeed yourself in office. So after you served once, you couldn't serve back-to-back terms. Somebody else had to serve. Then you could serve again. That's why you had, let me go ahead and go into this. We had one president that was appointed, that was Burleson, before Houston. And Houston was the first elected president. And then we had Bonaparte Lamar, Mirabeau Bonaparte Lamar. Then we had Houston again. Then we had Anson Jones. But Houston didn't serve back to back, mainly because the Constitution did not allow him to. He abided by the Constitution. Gee, wouldn't it be nice if politicians did that now? And you had to be at least 35 years old. Now, it also included a Declaration of Rights, much like a Bill of Rights, that had 17 articles. Some of the differences that they had with Texas, if you were a minister of the gospel, you were ineligible to be president or a member of Congress. For some reason, Texas went ahead and wanted to make sure that ministers were not politicians and vice versa. It also gave Congress the responsibility to set up a system of education. And they also had a provision in there against draft dodgers. If you left Texas to avoid military service, you could lose your citizenship and title to your lands. And they enforced this quite a bit. They had some crisis about land laws in 1837 because they considered anyone who left Texas during the Revolution no longer had right to their land, with the exception of widows and orphans. We took care of widows and orphans. And the government was not allowed to show preference for one religion over another. You also, now when it gets to the topic of slavery, there were some touchy issues. The slaves were to remain slaves. Congress was forbidden to emancipate slaves or legislate against the import of slaves from the United States, but importation from any other country was declared piracy. So they couldn't bring in slaves from anywhere else, only the U.S. The U.S. had a monopoly on the slave trade. And Congress did not step in to emancipate the slaves. They felt like it was up to the owners. It was their property. They're the ones that decide. It is not up to Congress to decide, because it wasn't Congress's property. Now, I realize that those were different times, and you're going to have to look at it through that lens rather than say, those big bad Texans, they did some terrible things. Well, the Constitution was a reflection of the times in which they lived and the values there. Now, another thing, they went ahead and did away with some of the acts of the Congress of Coahuila in Texas under the principle of nullification. Because nullification and secession are two hot topics even today. The whole idea that you could nullify previous laws, and the whole idea that the people can go ahead and secede from the nation that they were once a part of. Those often go hand in hand in terms of dealing with unjust laws. And Texas definitely had nullification as part of things. Now, for whatever reason, when this Constitution was passed, they wrote it and finished it in March, but they did not submit it to the people for their approval until September. Now, they also made it a point whenever they passed laws that whatever the Congress had to pass, it had to go to the people for approval. Now, can you imagine that? If the U.S. Congress, with all their wild spending, submitted it to the people to let the people actually vote on it? Mind-boggling. Those Texans, what were they up to? And this just hits on the high points of the Constitution of the Republic. I think we are doing ourselves a disservice by not taking a look at some of these historic documents. If nothing else, they give us ideas. Because a lot of times we get this mindset that the U.S. Constitution is the only one. I mean, yeah, we're under that. At the same time, there are ways to go ahead and improve things. And some of these thinkers from previous ages, they put some thought into it. And they had some ideas worth considering. I hope you enjoyed this today. And if you have any questions, concerns, leave them below. I'll be glad to get to them. So until next time, vaya con Dios. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.